Hare Krishna, good morning dear devotees from Sri Jagannath Puri Dham. These are our adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the 80th session in our series we're calling Meeting in Kurukshetra, and it's a sub-part of the 34th part of the Bhramara-gita, 47th chapter, the 10th canto. And today we're going to be speaking something about the mystery of Krishna's message to the Vraja gopis and the many layers of meanings contained within that message. So we'll start with just a few prayers. Narayanam namaskrityam naramschaiva narotamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayamudirayat vede ramayaneschaiva purane bhadate tata adavante chamadye chahari sarvatra giyate Mukam karoti vachalam bhangum langayate girim Yat kripa tamaham vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Paramananda He Madhava Padunga Luchi Makaranda Se Makaranda Panakori Anande Bolo Hari Hari Harinka Name Vandavela Hari Kori Ve Chakadola Se Chakadolanka Paraye Manamo Rahu Nirantare Manamo Nirantare Rahu Ha Krishna Boli Jiva Jao Ha Krishna Boli Jao Jiva Mote Dada Radha Dava Mote Dada Radha Dava Mote Dada Radha Dava Dharma Projita Kaita Vocha Padamo Nyamatranam Satam Vedyam Vastavamata Vastu Shivadam Tapatrayon Mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamune Kate Kimva Parayishvara Sadyo Hridya Varudyate Tripritibhishu Shushu Vistakshanat Nigamakolpataro Gavitam Phalam Shukamukadamitra Gravasam Pibata Bhagavatam Vasamalayam Mohoraho Rasika Bhuvi Bhavuka Anato Pasamam Sakshad Bhakti Yogam Hoksaje Lokasya Janato Vidvam Chakre Satvata Samhitam Yasham Vaishuyamanayam Krishne Paramapurushe Bhakti-udpadyate Pumsa Shoka Moha Bhayapaha Srimad Bhagavatam Puranamamalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam Yasmin Paramahamsamekam Jnanam Padam Giyate Tatra Jnana Vairagya Bhakti Sahitam Naiskamyama Viskritam Tachchandran Supaten Vicharana Pado Bhaktya Vimuchen Naraha Arto Yam Brahma Sutranam Bhadatartha Vinirnaya Gayatri Vasharupo So Vedartha Padibrimitaha Sarva Vedeti Hasanam Sadam Sadam Samudritam Sarva Vedanta Sadam Hi Srimad Bhagavatam Ishyate Tadrasamrita Tripta Shanam Yatasradvachi Kuchit Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning to everybody from Sri Jagannath Puri, and we're continuing with our series we're calling Meeting in Kurukshetra. And I'd just like to offer a prayer at the beginning of this. This is a verse from Srila Jiva Goswami's Bhagavad Vaishnava Toshini, first verse in 46th chapter. He offers pranams to Uddhava. Artaika sadanam Krishnam, artan brajajanam shatan, tam chatarsvasakam bhaktam artya bande durashaya. Artarki saranam Krishnam, with in great sadness, with a hopeless heart. He says, I offer my respects to Krishna, whose artan brajajanam's chatan is the only shelter for those who are suffering, and the only shelter for the suffering people of Braj. Tam chatarsvasakam bhaktam artyavande darasaya. And I offer my pranams to Uddhava, who alleviated their suffering. So we're reading today from the 29th verse, the 47th chapter. We're going to continue from our last session. And I'm going to, we may be on this verse for another time or two. It's quite a very, very deep verse. And a very, as we would like to describe, a very important verse to understand the basic principles of our Gaudiya Vaishnava theology. So this is Uddhava speaking to the gopis. But the verse begins by stating Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, because Uddhava is repeating what he heard from Krishna. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Bhavatinam Viyoga Me Nahi Sarvatmana Kvachit Yata Bhutani Bhuteshu Kamvav Agnir Jalam Mayi Tataham Chamana Prana Bhutindriya Gunashrayah. The Supreme Lord said, Krishna, Uddhava was telling this to the gopis, you are never actually separated from me, for I am the soul of all creation, just as the elements of nature, ether, air, fire, water, and earth are present in every created being. So I'm present within everyone's mind, life, air, and senses, and also within the physical elements and the modes of material nature. So I'm going to review quite a bit today from our previous session, because our last session we were traveling and I wasn't able to do something, and I don't want to lose the flow of things. So we're looking at Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's lengthy commentary in this verse, and he speaks about two messages, two purposes of Krishna's message. Jiva Goswami in his commentary speaks about three different messages that Krishna is giving, three different aspects of this. Let's see here. I hope everybody can hear me okay. Look at Vidarbha, can you tell me, can you hear me all right? Can everybody hear me okay? No.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu. We can hear you fine.
Okay, thank you. Somebody just wrote and complained that they couldn't hear. But it's not my fault. It's their computer, whatever. Strange things in the age of COVID. So Jiva Goswami gives some explanation, three different meanings of this verse that Krishna is telling the gopis. And Vishwanath speaks about two different purposes of Krishna's first message. And he says that this message, it gives some instruction in philosophical knowledge. It acts to reveal the strength of the gopis' praying, because Uddhava is attached to Gyan, to informational content, because he's a disciple of Brihaspati. And what's the glory of Brihaspati? Brihaspati knows so much Shastra, so many Vedas and things, and that's why you go to him. People don't go to Brihaspati because he's the greatest devotee. The primary consideration is that he has some information. And so many times people, they approach teachers for that reason. I have a lot of friends who've taught in different schools in ISKCON, like the MIHE and VIHE, who sometimes complain to me that so many students come just to get some information, and they're professional students, and they get great grades. They know how to get good grades, but sometimes the teachers feel like they haven't understood what's going on whatsoever. Interesting point. And it's very much connected with this topic today too. So Vishnu says that there's two purposes of Krishna's message. One is he wants to give some philosophical information. But he's doing that, Jiva Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, to fool those people who are dull-minded idiots and who are just attached to informational content and think that that information is the most important thing of all. And so that then they can say, yes, Krishna spoke Gyan to the gopis. Gyan is very, very important. Information is very, very important. But another reason why Krishna spoke this way was to smash that Gyan, to show that Uddhava, who's the greatest speaker of Gyan, when he speaks this, it can't even touch the love of the gopis. And the gopis just become annoyed when Krishna speaks like this to him. So in this way, he smashes Uddhava and he teaches Uddhava something. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also says that because what Krishna is going to tell the gopis is very, very confidential, that he speaks, and I'm going to use an example which is not good for Vaishnavas because we don't take onions, right? But an onion is a kind of, I guess you call it a vegetable. An onion is that fruit of a plant that you peel off so many different layers. There's layer after layer after layer. So also within Krishna's instructions here, there's so many different layers. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he explains why it is that Uddhava begins by saying Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Why doesn't it say Shri Uddhava Uvacha? Because Uddhava is speaking. Because Uddhava is confused. And he thinks to himself, I can't understand what's going on. And the Vrindavan Lilamrita, we read how Nandikishore Goswami, he explains this verse, that Uddhava is thinking, Mora Prabhu itadrisi vakya prayojan, amana durgama eta koriya bhavana. He said, although Krishna told this to me, this vakya, but it's not clear to me. It's very durgama. It's very, very difficult for me to understand. Therefore, parokshiko hena Krishna sandesha jekahe nivedana kori sabe mana dehatahi. That Krishna said something to me, I'm just going to repeat what Krishna said. And in fact, that's what Krishna told Uddhava. In the previous chapter, when he told Uddhava, Gachotava Vajam Somyam, that my dear Somya, my dear gentle one, gentle Uddhava, and we spoke about how this was Uddhava's qualification, that he's very gentle. You go, Gachotava Vajam, you go to Vrindavan, and Krishna tells him that Mat Sandesha Vimochaya, you give the Sandesh, which Vimochaya will relieve the gopis. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that the word Sandeshai is plural. It's one message, in other words, but you have to repeat it again and again and again. And to that repetition, many different meanings will come out, and different persons will be instructed in different ways. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in Madhya Lila chapter 2, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami kind of has a writer's crisis. Sometimes a writer also has a crisis and thinks, what am I writing this for? Who is this for? And he's thinking, this is so high. Who can appreciate this? Who can understand this? And then he comments on his own writing. Jivan nahi bhuje keha shunite shunite seha ki adbhuta chaitanya charita. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare. Krishna upajipe priti jani ve rashera riti shunile boro hoita. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. He says, Jeba nahi buje keha. He says, yeah, it's true, okay. I understand. A lot of people are not going to understand what I'm going to speak. In fact, they're going to misunderstand. He said, but shunite seha. They should hear it over and over again. Who can understand the Bhramara-gita? Who can understand the Rasa Panchadhyaya, the 5 chapters of the Ras Leela in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. But Srila Prabhupada wrote those down in Krishna book, and he told the devotees to go and distribute those books all over. And they were going to rock concerts. I was going to rock concerts with those books. We'd open up and say, George Harrison signed this. We'd show them in the beginning. And they would read that, they'd read that book all about Krishna, including those 5 chapters of the Ras Leela. What is that? Sunite sunise seha. Ki adbhuta chaitanya churit. He says they should just hear over and over again this adbhuta chaitanya churit, these amazing pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And if they do that, Krishna upajipi priti janibe rasarariti sunile borohoy hita. That just by this hearing, sunile, borohoy hita, there's so much benefit from that. So we should hear it over and over again. And if you do that, Krishna upajipi priti, then you'll develop upajipi, you'll develop this priti, this love for Krishna. And janibe rasarariti, that love is the qualification to understand this subject matter. If you develop that love, then you'll understand this. So this is our program. We just hear this thing over and over again. And we learn this from Uddhava. That Uddhava, Krishna told Uddhava, in effect saying to Uddhava that this is something which is going to be very difficult for you to relate to, for you to understand. So use the word Sandeshaya, which means plural, that you speak this over and over again to the gopis. And he said that because there's going to be different listeners, because we're listeners to this subject matter. And what can we understand? What to speak of Uddhava? What about us? So if Uddhava hears this again and again, then Uddhava will begin to understand. Then we'll begin to understand. And the gopis also, they'll find many, many different layers of meaning within these words of Krishna. So this is a very important subject matter. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives an example in his Sarita Darshani commentary. He cites a verse from the 19th verse of the 29th chapter, which is Krishna speaking to the gopis at the time of the Ras Leela. And he says that in this verse, Krishna is speaking karma yoga. And now later on, in the Bhramara-gita, through the mouth of Uddhava, Krishna is speaking Gyan yoga. So in this 29th chapter, in the Ras Leela, Krishna tells the gopis, a very famous verse, Vrajanya, Esha Gora Rupa, Gora Sattva Nishevita, Pratiyata Brajam Neha Steham Stribi Sumadhyamaha. And this verse has at least 2 different meanings. Krishna is telling the gopis that Rajani Esha Gora Rupa. Rajani means nighttime. There's a very nice flower called Rajani Gandha, which is a beautiful flower. It's usually kind of green or whitish flowers, and they blossom at night. And they're so very, very fragrant. So it's called Rajani Gandha, or the fragrance of the night, that which is giving fragrance to the night. So Krishna is telling the gopis, Rajanya Esha Gora Rupa, that this nighttime, it's Gora Rup. It's a frightening time. And Gora Sattva Nisevita, there's some very frightening creatures lurking around in the night. So Pratiyati Brajam, he says, my dear gopis, you should return immediately. Go back to Vrindavan. And he says, Neha Steyam Stribestu Madhyama. This is not a good place for ladies to stay. This is some karma yoga. This is dharma that Krishna is speaking to the gopis. That your wives, you should go back to your husbands. This is not appropriate. Ladies shouldn't be out at night. They shouldn't move about by themselves. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that according to the Sandhi, according to how you divide the Sandhi, Sandhi is that thing which divides the words in the verse. Sometimes if you read Devanagari and you look at a verse, it looks like just one big line. There's no divisions whatsoever. And in our BBT work, generally they divide the words so that it's easier for us to recite when we see it in English. But if you look in the Devanagari, sometimes it is just like one frightening, big, huge, long line. So the Sandhi divides the words But the Sandhi can be divided in different ways. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he comments, Rajani Esha Agora Rup, Agora Sattva Nisedita, Pratiyata Bhajamna Iha Steyam Stribirsu Madhyamaha. He gives the same verse, but he breaks the Sandhi up in a different way than what I just read with it. He says that my dear gopis, that this night, this Rajani, it's Agora Rup. Rajani Esha Gora Rup, the verse says. Esha means this. But if you break it up in a different way, and you put the long A of Esha before the word Gora, then the meaning is that the night's not frightening, Agora Rup. And if you put the long A at the end of Rupa with the next word again, then it means then Agora Sattva Nisevita, there's no frightening creatures going around here. And when Krishna says Pratiyati Brajam, he says that Brajam na Pratiyata. Don't return to Vrindavan. You should stay here. My dear ladies, Ihastribir stayam. Because you're very slender waisted ladies, meaning you're very, very beautiful. Sumadhyamaha. This is another meaning of it. So in effect, Vishnu says that on one side, Krishna's telling the gopis, this is not a good time. I know you're telling me you're coming here to pick flowers because the gopis are shy to say that they've come to see Krishna. So Krishna is saying, you came here to pick flowers, but it's not a good time because there's scorpions and there's snakes in the bushes, Agora Sattvatam, and they're hard to see. There's tigers and other frightening creatures. So you should go back to Vrindavan. And then the gopis, Vishwanath says, maybe they reply back to, we'll just rest here for a little while. And then we'll go. And then Krishna says, no. Ladies shouldn't stay here. Because you're very beautiful women. When he says Sumadhyama, that you're very slender-waisted, beautiful ladies, that indicates, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Krishna is saying, Krishna Brahmachari, he quotes this verse from Gopal Tapani, that Krishna is a brahmachari. It's not good. You're chaste ladies. I am a brahmachari, Shruti Shastra says. And brahmacharis shouldn't be alone with ladies in the middle of the night. And ladies definitely shouldn't be alone with brahmacharis. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in this way gives so many different meanings to this verse. Rajani Yatiti Rajani. He says that another meaning of this Rajani, or this nighttime, is this Rajanatiti. It's the nighttime because it gives some feeling. It's a very nice background for our meeting. And it's Agora Rup, it's not frightening. Agora Sattva Nisevita, there's no frightening creatures around. And meaning, Vishwanath says also that the only creatures are here are some nice gentle deer, maybe some bunny rabbits or squirrels and like that. There's no tigers or other aggressive animals, so don't worry about it. Agora Sattva Nisevita, another meaning is that Krishna is saying, don't be afraid of your husbands, because one meaning is Agora Sattva Nisevita, there's no frightening creatures looking around. Or another meaning is Gora Sattva Nisevita, that there are frightening creatures, so you shouldn't stay. But a third meaning in this verse is Gora Sattva Nisevita, there are frightening creatures around, so don't worry about your husbands. Because these frightening creatures are here, your husbands, they're chickens, they're just a bunch of weak men, and they're not going to come here. They're going to be afraid of those animals. Therefore, na pratiyati brajam, na, don't go back to Braj. Rather, ihasteyam, stay here in my company. And then the gopis, they say, but how are you staying here? And Krishna says, Srivi, I'm staying with ladies. And then the gopis say, but you're satisfied just to stay with any ladies? And Krishna says, no. Sumadhyama, only ladies like you, who are very young and very beautiful, you should stay with me, not other ladies. So Krishna's words are very, very brilliant. So they can be understood in two completely opposite ways. So on one hand, Krishna's teasing the gopis by telling them that this is very dangerous to be here after dark, and there's so many dangerous animals, it's inauspicious, you should go home. But at the same time, Krishna's telling them the exact opposite. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that after the Ras Leela, the gopis were chastising Krishna, saying, what kind of lover are you We're coming to you with our hearts, and you're speaking all this karma yoga. And Krishna says, no, 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 you didn't understand what I was saying to you. I was telling you, don't leave, stay with me. It's not a frightening place. And we want you to hear, we want you. So this is the art of speaking, and we elaborated on this quite a bit I think in our last session. I want to just unpack it a little bit more in some ways which we didn't look to in our last session. We just finished Gita Jayanti, the day which some Vaishnavas say was the appearance of the Bhagavad Gita, the day that Krishna spoke the Gita. And Krishna gives this very confidential message in the Bhagavad Gita, Mamana Bhavamad Bhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskaru and Sarva Dharma Pritya. Just meditate on me, be my devotee, surrender everything, and I'll protect you. But then, again, in the very end of the Bhagavad Gita, in the 18th chapter, in the 67th verse, Krishna tells Arjuna, Idam te narapaskaya nabhaktaya kadachana chashishusha vacham nachamam abhisuyati. That don't speak this. This sounds very confusing for devotees who are going out right now for the marathon. I was just speaking with a dear friend. This morning we're just having a chat with a dear devotee in Reuben Prabhu. Maybe some of you know him in London. And he's going out doing book distribution every day. And it's very dangerous. He already had COVID very severely, but he just got COVID again because he's going out on the street and meeting so many different people. And it really just touched my heart about how he's going out and he's risking his life. Devotees are actually risking their life to go out and share this knowledge with people. And this is our life to give this knowledge. But here, Krishna is saying the exact opposite. He said, don't give this knowledge. Don't give it away. You don't give it to someone who's a tapaskaya, who doesn't have any tapasya, who's not an austere person. Oh boy, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm in trouble. I'm not such an austere person. Na bhaktaya kadachana, oh my God. If he's not a devotee, it means he doesn't have devotion. Kadachana, not at any time. Don't ever speak to them. Oh boy. And then he says, Nacha ashashushave, to someone who's not doing service. Navacham, don't speak to that person, and especially abhyasuyati, someone who's an envious person. Don't speak this Bhagavad Gita. Don't give it to them. So then what are we doing? Should we just cancel the marathon? Because Krishna says it. Because I think if you go out on the street and you interview people and say, excuse me, are you austere? Or are you a devotee of Krishna? Are you doing devotional service? Are you envious? I think you may distribute one Bhagavad Gita the whole marathon. It would probably be a very good Bhagavad Gita you distribute. But so then why did Srila Prabhupada, why do Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and our acharyas stress that we should be distributing this way? Because Krishna's message is like, it comes in different layers, like an onion. And for certain people, they're going to be cheated. And they'll think, oh yeah, this is the Hindu Bible. And this is interesting. I have so many different philosophical books in my library, and I should also read this book. And that's okay. And we don't discourage them. We tell them so many things when they're distributing books. I have a friend, my dear friend Madhav. Sometimes he watches our talks, and he's in Switzerland, I think now. But he used to distribute books with us in LA. And he would tell people sometimes very crazy things. Once I saw him stop someone in the airport. And he says, hey, sir, what kind of work do you do? And the guy said, I'm a professional hunter. And Madhav said, really? No kidding. This is a book all about hunting. See? They gave him a copy of Bhagavad Gita. So you might kind of twist things a little bit. The Bhagavad Gita is about warfare. It's kind of like hunting and like that. So you could say in one sense that Bhagavad Gita is that. So perhaps I'm not, my friend was not actually lying. But the Bhagavad Gita is not about that. The Bhagavad Gita is a message of love. But not everyone can understand it. And Krishna speaks so many different things in the Gita, even devotees become confused sometimes. They think, oh, I'm supposed to pinch my nose and sit in the kusha grass asana and do this and this. And and why Krishna is speaking all these things, and even sometimes devotees take certain things out of the Gita that they like. Krishna tells Arjuna, or Arjuna tells Krishna in the first chapter, he says that we can't do this fighting because if we do this, then the ladies are going to be contaminated because the men will all die, and this is very important. So Bhagavad Gita is all about Varnashram Dharma. And they see that in there. And we can find so many different things within the Bhagavad Gita. And you really can't say that one person's right and one person's wrong. In one sense, they're all correct. That's the amazing thing about Krishna's words, Krishna's message. But we want to understand what it is in Krishna's heart. What is his ultimate message? And Krishna is saying some things here through Uddhava to attract people who are very foolish. We think that jnana is the most important thing. Or as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains in this verse from the Ras Leela, from the 29th chapter of the Gita, Krishna's, again, he's speaking this thing to the gopis, and people will quote this, yeah, this is very good. Ladies shouldn't be out at night. Nighttime is very dangerous. There's frightening creatures there, and Krishna says this. And Krishna here is speaking about Dharma. Krishna is speaking about Varnashram Dharma, and we should do. So we also speak about Varnashram Dharma, and Srila Prabhupada wanted Varnashram Dharma spoken about. But that wasn't Srila Prabhupada's purpose. Huh? Let's see if I can find it real quick here. In, I think it was the last issue of our Krishna Katamrita Bindu magazine, or maybe 2 issues ago. Let's look and see. We printed a letter from Srila Prabhupada. I'm just looking it up. Yeah, here it is. It's a letter Prabhupada wrote to Hansaduta Prabhu in 1974. And he said, the Varnashram system is for convenience sake in the material world. It has nothing to do with spiritual life. But Srila Prabhupada, although in his books, I haven't found even one place where Prabhupada says that Varnashram is 50% of his mission. I haven't found it even in any lectures that Prabhupada says it. But Prabhupada spoke that at least to one of his disciples who repeated that. And we can see that Prabhupada did speak quite a bit about it. It was very important for him. But Prabhupada says that as Varnashram has nothing to do with spiritual life. Acceptance of Varnashram means a little easy progress to spiritual life. Otherwise, it has no importance to us. For example, he says, all my European and American disciples have no Varnashram position. Huh? Another lecture Prabhupada gave in Los Angeles in 1968, Madhudvisa Prabhu asked Prabhupada a question. He said, so we should follow this Varnashram thing? And Prabhupada said, were you following Varnashram before you joined? Because you followed Varnashram, did that give you qualification to come to Bhakti? No. Your only qualification is that you've been following Bhakti. So Prabhupada explains here, for example, all my European and American disciples have no Varnashram position, but spiritually, because they follow the rules and regulations and also my instructions, their advancement spiritually is being appreciated by everyone. Always remember that Varnashram life is a good program for material life, and it helps one in spiritual life. But spiritual life is not dependent upon it. After all, the system of Varnashram has to be realized before accepting spiritual life, and the renounced order of sannyas is the last stage of Varnashram. So, Srila Prabhupada, in the same way that Krishna is speaking this message to the gopis, and it appears that he's saying many different things to many different people, and some people, they won't look any further. So in a similar way, Srila Prabhupada was also very, very merciful. And he wanted devotees to distribute Bhagavad Gita, understanding that a lot of people won't understand it, they won't appreciate it, but still they should get it. And Prabhupada said if they just touch the book, if they just see someone distributing the book, they'll get so much benefit. I used to distribute books in the LAX airport sometimes in Los Angeles. And I remember a few times, sometimes people are standing and they're watching because there's something attractive. There's some attractive energy when a devotee is going and giving out these books, and there's something going on. It's a happening. And sometimes people would stop and they would just watch. And an amazing thing would happen sometimes after watching for some time. Sometimes they might stand there for 20 or 30 minutes just watching. You distribute the books, and after a while they come over, they become purified just by watching the exchange, because it's such a powerful thing to give this Bhagavad Gita. But who is understanding this Bhagavad Gita? And therefore Krishna is telling Arjuna at the end of the Gita, idam te narapaska nabhakta kadachana, that don't distribute this knowledge. What does it mean? It doesn't mean that we don't distribute the Bhagavad Gita, but we don't speak about the intimate understanding of the Gita. We don't, I remember, I sometimes comment in 1971 and 1972, I first came in contact with Srila Prabhupada's books. I was a young boy. We used to go and play in an old abandoned house. And some hippies or someone had been staying in, they'd put pictures from Krishna book on the walls. And I would stand and look at those pictures for a long time. And at that time in my life, somehow by Krishna's mercy, I was very interested in different religions and in philosophy, and I was reading Greek mythology and Roman mythology and Danish mythology and things, and reading the Bible and different religious books. And looking at the pictures, I could understand this is something spiritual, but I couldn't figure out who is this little blue boy? And who are all the girls? And what are all these cows? And what is this? I just couldn't understand it. So you can't go and speak that thing to people. You can't go and tell them, this Bhagavad Gita, this is spoken by God and God is blue. And you can say some things, but you can't give them that inner understanding of the Gita. And therefore, when Krishna says to Arjuna, idam te narapaske na bhakte kadachana, this thing, don't speak this to people who are not austere, who are not devotees. Don't speak this to someone, nachashashushave vacham, who's not doing service, nachamam yabhisuyati, who's envious. What does he mean? It doesn't mean that we shouldn't have the Gita, because Krishna's speaking the Gita in the middle of a battlefield and there's a whole bunch of demons also hearing it. Everybody's hearing it, but they're not hearing it. Sunidila Sunakan. Narottam Das Thakur in one song, he says that you're hearing, but you're not hearing. And it goes in one ear and it comes out the other ear. But in between, it sticks a little bit maybe. And there's some benefit there. So we spoke something about this more in our last session. We cited a story which Baladi Vidyabhushan gives in his commentary on Vedanta Sutra about how Lord Brahma from the Chandogya Upanishad, how he was giving spiritual knowledge. And there were two disciples who were there, Indra and Virochan. And Indra is a devotee and Virochan's a demon. And so they both sat and they listened to the exact same words. And then they went home. And Indra told everybody that Lord Brahma is telling us that we're spirit souls. And as spirit souls, we should serve the Paramatma, the super soul, and that's the purpose of life. But Virochan, he went back and he told everybody that Atma means the body. And Lord Brahma is telling us that the important thing is we should serve our body. So it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing even for devotees. And therefore the poet, I think it was Cowper, he once wrote that we both read the Bible day and night, only you read black and I read white. My Guru Maharaj added once, and then we fight. So this is Krishna's words. They're understood in so many different ways by so many different persons. So let's go now to some of the deeper meanings of this verse, in the 29th verse of this 47th chapter. And it's very, very important because this chapter, this Bhramara-gita, it appears that Krishna is speaking jnana yoga to the gopis. And even devotees, we sometimes this is like really boring. Why is he speaking all these things? As someone who's attracted to bhakti, they may think, what is the point of reading all this? I want to go to the Ras Leela. I want to go to some other pastime where Krishna's interacting with the gopis. And why is he speaking all this gyan? And it climaxes in the meeting in Kurukshetra, which is what we're trying to speak about. We've had 80 sessions so far speaking about meeting in Kurukshetra, and we still haven't gotten to Kurukshetra. We haven't even left Vrindavan yet. We haven't gone to Dwarka. We're going to be going to Dwarka sometime soon. And from Dwarka, then we'll go to Kurukshetra. And then from Kurukshetra, we'll go to Jagannath Puri. Because actually, Jagannath Puri is Kurukshetra Leela. Srila Prabhupada writes in some of his purports in Chaitanya Charitamrita, that the same feelings that the gopis were experiencing in Kurukshetra is the same feelings of Rath Yatra. And so we want to understand Gaura Lila, and especially want to understand the highest wave in the ocean of Gaura Lila, which is Mahaprabhu's Gambhira Lila, and his feelings in the Gambhira. But to do that, we have to go through this meeting in Kurukshetra. And a major part of it is this Bhramara-gita, which, as we've commented in a number of our previous sessions, some Vaishnavas, some Vaishnava scholars and sadhus, acharyas have described this Bhramara-gita as being the most important chapter in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. And now again, someone may question, how is that Krishna's Janma Lila is most important? There are other people may say, no. The Rasa Panchadhyaya, the 5 chapters about the Ras Lila, that's the most important. And indeed, our acharyas say that that's like the heart of the smiling face of the 10th canto, the Ras Lila. But then why are they saying that this Bhramara-gita is most important? It's most important for us because there's a connection between this Krishna Lila and Gaura Lila that we find in the Bhramara-gita. And therefore, in the Antya-lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami speaks about Mahaprabhu's mood in the Gambhira, he says that Mahaprabhu was in the mood of Radha when she was hearing this message from Uddhava in this 47th chapter of the 10th canto. So there's a string connecting all these different places of Vrindavan, going to Dwarka, and going to Kurukshetra, and then ultimately going to Jagannath Puri. And then ultimately from Jagannath Puri, that string goes all over the world through Srila Prabhupada. So I think I'm going to stop here because this is a good place to stop. And I'd like to invite any of the devotees who are listening today. I want to offer my pranams to Srila Prabhupada's disciple Sarvadrik Prabhu, who's taking part here, and our friend Tejasvini Radhika, and Janava Mata, Natalia, Hare Krishna, Kamalini Mataji, also Prabhupada's disciple, and Tejasvini Radhika, and Nikesh, and others who are taking part. And we have a few devotees also, I think, still in our Zoom session today. Hare Krishna, if anybody here has any reflections or comments, we also have a couple of devotees here in the room with us, because this is like an onion. It has so many different layers. We have a Zoom layer, we have a Facebook layer, we also have the in-person layer too. If anybody has any reflections that you'd like to share, something that you're getting from our discussion today, this is a good time for that. Look, Vidarbha, do you have anything you want to share? Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Speak loudly, please, so devotees can.
Yes, Prabhu, really appreciated your point about different layers and how, based on where we are at, we may hear the same message and have a different understanding. And I guess connected to that was a question. So in that case, just like in the Mahabharata, there's a verse that says that the truth is found within the heart of a Mahajan. So sometimes it is a little confusing. So the best way is to simply follow in the footsteps of the great devotees. Is that yes. How one finds?
One thing we always have to remember, and Krishna says this in a very tricky way in the Gita, he says, Raja Vidya, this is the king of knowledge. And so our ears automatically pick up, oh, the king of knowledge. What is the king of knowledge? Raja Vidya, Raja Guyam. It's the most confidential. Wow, we're really excited now. It's the most confidential. Pratyak Savagamam Dharmyam. But it's meant to be practically realized, Krishna says. And therefore, this Bhagavad Gita, even if you can't read, even if you're blind, someone can read Bhagavad Gita to you. You don't have to be able to read. You don't have to be able to touch the book or see a book distributor. If you just understand the message of the Gita, someone doesn't even have to be able to read. If you have to read, then it means that bhakti is not swarat. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Madhurya Kadambini gives a long explanation about how bhakti is swarat, or independent. It's not dependent on anything. It's not dependent on gyan. It's not dependent on reading. So if we say that it's dependent on reading, then we would have to conclude something very unpalatable, that maybe we might even conclude that Krishna is not God, because his message is not applicable for everybody in all time and all places. But if this message can be given and can be understood by people who can't read, who are blind, then actually it must be meant for everyone. It has to be relevant for everyone. So, like that. Is that okay? Is that helpful? Something?
Yes, Prabhu, definitely.
Prabhuji, do you have any?
Also,
Go ahead.
I was just saying that it also allows for a sense of humility, because sometimes when we come across absolute knowledge, then there is a sense in which we may consider ourselves to be on an absolute platform, and not allow for those layers to be present, and we may become a little fanatical and a little even arrogant. So I feel that accommodating for those layers allows us to remain in that place of wonder, and also be humble to receive and understand it in deeper ways.
Thank you. Yeah, we want to be in that place of wonder. And our activities, which on one level look very simplistic, we're booksellers. We're going out and we're preaching. Oftentimes we use that English word preach. Prabhupada also used that word. It's not bad to use that. But the English word preach, look in a dictionary. It has a negative connotation also. Sometimes people say, hey, don't preach to me. We're not interested in preaching. We're interested in prachar. Bhajeti prachar. It's described in the Jai Radhe, Jai Krishna, Jai Vrindavan song. We're doing this Bhajeti prachar. We're sharing, but prachar means to share, to nourish something. Just like the word vardhana, go vardhana. Vardhana means to nourish or to spread something. So this is our prachar. And it's like an onion also. And on one level, we're booksellers. And we're going out and we're making money, and the temples benefit from the money, and we're spreading the message, and it's just like advertising. and we're doing that on one level. On another level, we're helping conditioned souls. On another level, we're helping ourselves. But on another level, Nikunja Yuna Rati Keli Sija Yayali Bir Yuktira Pekshaniya Tatsati Daksharati Valabasha Vande Goroshi Charnaravinda. There's something else deep going on. And Srila Prabhupada commented on this verse of Gurvashtakam once in Hawaii. He said this book distribution means Gopi Bhav. And we're doing this thing, ultimately, we're helping to repay Krishna's debt to the gopis. And that's a long discussion how that goes on and what that means. But we're doing it by doing this book distribution. So many different things are going on at the same time. And as you pointed out very nicely, we have to be very careful. Even in the Christian tradition, you can Google what's the phrase we often use, Krishna Pram, it's not coming to my mind, that Haridas Thakur didn't have a sense of entitlement. You can Google entitlement in Christianity, and there are many thoughtful Christian philosophers who spoke about the obstacle of entitlement, where you start thinking it's because I'm a Christian, I'm saved, and therefore I'm better than other people, and then they can't really be humble. And that's a problem in spiritual life. So we also have that problem, as you pointed out, as devotees. Sometimes we go out in book distribution, and maybe we're not thinking this exactly but subtly we may be thinking, when we approach some poor conditioned soul, this is your lucky day, you disgusting fallen creature, you. Here I am to save you. I'm such an effulgent, ecstatic, blissful, advanced soul. I'm here to give you blessings. And okay, that may be in some sense. But if that's our conception, then we're missing a lot of layers in that transcendental sweet mango. We're just staying on the outside. It's not an onion, but it's a very sweet mango. And we're just getting the outside part of it. And maybe like that outside skin of the mango, it's a bit bitter and astringent. We don't appreciate the sweetness of the inside. But if we approach in a humble way, an astonishing thing happens. And I would suggest, honestly, that any good book distributor has experienced this. I'm not a good book distributor, but I experienced this a number of times. When I would go out, and sometimes a part of me is thinking, yes, I'm going to bless this poor slob, this poor conditioned soul. But I meet somebody and I think, oh my God, they're more advanced than me. It happens sometimes, and you become crushed. Just like when I was a young boy, we used to watch a cartoon called The Flintstones, the popular cartoon. And Fred Flintstone was the hero of the cartoon. And sometimes he'd become very proud, and then his pride would become smashed. And in the cartoon, all of a sudden, he would become very, very tiny. It's like a little person. So we become like Fred Flintstone, like that. Sometimes on book distribution, we go out in a very proud way. And that's a great benefit. And this is what's happening with Uddhava. Uddhava is one of the first book distributors. And he's going to Vrindavan, and he's a little proud. Yes, I passed Bhakti Shastri. I'm a disciple of Brihaspati. I know all this stuff, and I'm going to preach. I'm going to counsel these poor residents in Vrindavan. They're just in the modes of material nature. They're undergoing mundane lamentation, so let me preach to them. He's thinking like that. But actually, what happens is he gets preached to, and his false ego gets smashed. So similarly with this book distribution, such a wonderful benediction. We're not qualified to really do book distribution, but we're going out there to do this thing for our benefit, for our purification, because we're trying to please Gurudev, we're trying to please Srila Prabhupada, we're trying to please the Vaishnavas, and we're trying to serve the conditioned souls that we're meeting. And if we go to them with that mood that you're actually a very, very special person, you have more qualification than I do. I'm so fallen. I can't understand this thing, but you can understand this better than me. So this really belongs to you. If we go with that kind of mood, then wow, very, very amazing things happen. Is that okay? Thank you. It's such nice reflection. Prabhuji had something you want to share?
Saying that was the, like, whenever I hear about mood of Nityananda Prabhu and Haridas Thakur going door to door and falling at the feet of those people and saying, you are the most intelligent and please take this message. And I guess there's a deeper meaning to it. It's not that he was just feeling like that, but I guess to teach us that is the mood that I guess we need to inculcate as seeing that soul as part of Krishna and how special that soul is. And I'm here to learn from you. That is where the real book distribution happens. Actually, it's receiving that grace from that soul, and rather than just giving something to them.
There's an amazing statement from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, which I can kind of paraphrase. I don't remember exactly, but it's very close to what I'm about to say. And he speaks about the mood of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he says that Mahaprabhu is coming. He says the absolute truth is approaching us on his knees and begging us to accept this. That's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And how and why? Because he's in the mood of the gopis of Vrindavan. And those gopis, they're beseeching other living entities that they want to give this to so many different people. That's the mood of the gopis. That's the mood of Srimati Radharani. And therefore Radharani is Bhakti Devi. She's Bhakti Devi because her mood is to give mercy to so many different personalities. And that's why in our line, sannyas means gopi bhav. And someone takes sannyas, they get the gopi mantra. There's a mantra that which they meditate on themselves being a gopi. And that means preaching. The mode of being a gopi means that they're preaching, that they're going out and sharing something with someone. So I don't like using that word preaching even. It's convenient. And we can do that. But on one level, we've seen that sometimes devotees, they think, yes, I'm supposed to go out and preach. And coming from a Judeo-Christian background, preaching means, just like I remember my father was a born-again Christian and a little bit of a fanatic. It's my father, but he was a little bit of an intense person. When I joined the movement, he became very upset. And at one point, there was some scandal in the Bay Area in California where we were living with the devotees. And my father came, he was very disturbed, said, just see what these Hare Krishnas are like. And I remember I looked at him, I said, Dad, I read in the newspaper last week about a good Christian who was out preaching and sharing the message of the gospel. And he was preaching to some young boys. And they started making fun of him and saying bad things to him. And so then that Christian preacher got in his car and rammed those boys up against a brick wall and killed 2 of them. So from that, should I conclude that all Christians are like this? No, obviously. So, but that's the mood of some people in preaching. We want to take a car and just smash people up against a brick wall. That's the idea some people have in preaching. And sometimes even devotees coming from a Judeo-Christian background, the temple's telling us we should go and preach, and this is what preaching means. I'm going to go out and take the Bhagavad-gita, and I'm going to smack them in the head with the book. I'm going to smash all these people. We think that preaching means smashing and bashing, but we're doing prachar, brajeti prachar. We want to share and nourish people with the mood of Vrindavan. That's what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was given. But even those devotees going out with that smash and bash kind of mood with preaching, they also get benefit. Everybody gets benefit, even the persons who are watching it. But it's multi-layered. Thank you. Anything else for anybody? Marani, you want to share any reflection? Okay. Krishna Kun, you have something? Yeah, why don't you come over here? I'll hand you the mic.
I just have a very simple point that you quoted on Chaitanya Charitamrita also, and we know that Uddhava was also told by Krishna to repeat his message over and over again, so that the gopis can go deeper and deeper. This shunite, that we just hear the message over and over again, even if we don't understand it, we will develop love, and by that love, that will be the qualification for us to understand it. And sometimes devotees, after a few decades of chanting, may feel that they need to do some other sadhana, they need to do some other things. But Prabhupada gave us so much by just telling us to just simply chant Hare Krishna, just hear it over and over and over again, read the Bhagavatam, just follow this process, and when you have love, you will understand. So it's very hope-giving, I felt.
In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami describes the Bhagavatam. He says, Prati Shloki Prati Akshanan at the Koi, that every verse, every syllable has unlimited meaning. So sometimes coming from the West and coming from my kind of background, the movie, TV background, where we want to be entertained, we think, I already saw that movie. I don't need to watch it again. I've already heard this. Prabhu, come on, come on. I've already heard Damodar Leela 1,000 times. It's boring. Because we're approaching it with an entertainment kind of attitude. But we should approach it on our knees with our folded hands, that this is our service, and we want to hear this again and again. And then Prati Shloki Prati Akshanan at the Koi, we'll get unlimited different meanings to it. But if we just approach the message from an entertainment perspective, which sometimes as devotees, to be really blunt, we sometimes do, right? Because I've seen so many preachers, even Srila Prabhupada, he would present things in a certain way which is a little entertaining for people because you want to get their attention. Sometimes I find, depending on who I'm speaking to, maybe I'll tell a lot of jokes because that's just where they're at. And they need something very, very light and easy. So we have to bear in mind who it is that we're speaking to, and we'll speak accordingly. Okay, so thank you all very much. Ashwin Prabhu, you're there. I think you joined really late. Do you have anything you want to share? Or I don't know if maybe you're watching somewhere else online.
Yes, Prabhu, I just joined in the last few minutes, Prabhu, so I just heard some of the reflections. So.
Okay.
Nothing so much more, but it was nice to hear some of the reflections.
Yeah,
especially to hear from Krishna Kun Mataji was very nice. So. Krishna
Kun is always the icing on the cake. I'm
yes.
the kind of dull bread part of the cake, she's the icing. There's more of me, but she's the sweet part. Okay, thank you all very much. Granthana Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Samaveda Bhakta Binda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Vancha Kalpa Guru Vishchan Kripa Sindhu